who are walking around in yellow, they go to school here, and they are incredibly talented and very helpful. So Parmarth sang those beautiful sacred chants of Shiva to begin this session as we had our presenters walk in. And the plenary sessions are to many of the presenters and many of the participants really highlights of the festival, because so much of yoga is perceived as what we do on the mat, and yet so much is beyond the mat. And these discussions and these conversations and these presenters that we have that share their insights and their experiences and their wisdom with you, this is really a very special opportunity. And so, as we say in Gyan Yoga, the first part is Shravana, which is active listening, really listening, which means that you should probably turn your phones on silent or turn them off so they don't ring in the middle of the session. And also just give your full attention to what is being said, what is being prescribed here. The second part is manana, is what you contemplate on what is said. Yes, if food is in front on your table, until you put it in your mouth, it hasn't become part of you, right? So manana is taking this knowledge, this gyan that is being shared here, and really just contemplating on it. And then the third part, which is the most important, is nididhyasana. Is how do you take that which you have heard, which you have contemplated, and now make it part of who you are. Bring it into practice, bring it into action. And so I would encourage you to take that which is being said in these sessions and to bring it into practice, to apply it, because that is yoga. And so today when we're here, we are actually reflecting on this theme. What is yoga? And why does it matter anyway? And I think it's so beautiful that we start the festival this year with this theme, which just seems so obvious and yet so profound, because if we set the direction, then we know where to go. And so we're looking to our beautiful speakers today to help us set that direction for this festival to really be that utsav, that celebration inside of us. And so our speakers today are our beautiful, divine, beloved brother, Anand Mehrotra ji. A big round of applause for him. As many of you know, and I don't think I need to elaborate too much, you said you could skip it. So everybody knows who Anand is. And Anandji is someone who has really brought the practices of the Himalayas, the practices that the sages and the saints and the Rishi Parampara has kept preserved and protected for so long. And yet what's beautiful about him is he's been able to bring it to the masses and to people of diverse backgrounds beyond borders of race, religion, language, in a way that is really palpable. And I think that that's what makes him so very special. And of course, he's also established the Sattva Yoga Academy, and so many of the activities that happen there related to yoga, the courses, the classes, but also the charitable work that happens through there, the yoga in action. So it's a real privilege to have him here. And as I mentioned, he is also now a father. So congratulations to that. And to my left is Dr. Ganesh Raoji. A big round of applause for him. He, to many, is a really sort of leading teacher in understanding and applying yoga philosophy. Because so many people do yoga, but they don't know what yoga is. And he's somebody who has really studied the scriptures and the texts and the rishis and the sages and the words that they've said about what actually is yoga. He comes from a sports background, but he now heads and leads a lot of different committees and accreditation institutions that really guide yoga philosophy and yoga policy for the nation and for the world. So a big round of applause again for him. And then to his right is our beautiful divine Shakti, Shiva Rea. A big round of applause for Shiva Rea. I believe, I don't remember Sadhviji, she used to come to the festival many, many years ago and is returning back home. And you know, I feel as the spirit of the festival is so excited to have you back. Yeah, it's been a full kumbh. So she led a beautiful session yesterday that was open to everyone. And if people were there yesterday, you must have experienced the absolute delight and the energy and the Shakti of that session with the awareness and the drums and the move and the flow. And so I think just to summarize, that she is the embodiment of what living yoga in life is all about and how it flows through us, whether it's through dance, whether it's through the drums, or it's the beat of life itself. She is the embodiment of that yoga, that Shakti of yoga in action. So it's so beautiful to have you here. And so beautiful to welcome you back home. On behalf of Pujya Swamiji and Sadhviji. And again, I don't need to say much about Sadhvi Bhagwati Saraswati ji. She is the director and the Shakti and the pillar behind the International Yoga Festival. I think it is with her tender care and with any other part of the world. It's a beautiful opportunity in the festival to really transform and to bring the practices and the teachings of yoga and of spirituality into action. And she embodies that. She came here 28 years ago now, and originally from California. And if you haven't already, please get her biography, her memoir, From Hollywood to the Himalayas. Learn about her story and her journey, because it's really very profound and very transformative. And she brings those understandings and bridges the gap that often is created between the West and the East in understanding this culture and this tradition. And she embodies that bridge so beautifully. She heads and leads a number of different charitable institutions and organizations that have various activities that scale from water, sanitation, hygiene, to women empowerment, to tree plantation, and so much more. And we'll have an opportunity to share more about her. But I would really encourage you to read about her and pick up her book and get a sign while you're here, because you have that opportunity from her personally. And with that, I would like each of the speakers to share their thoughts on the theme, what is yoga and why does it matter? Say about 5 minutes? 5 minutes. So each of you will speak about 5 minutes on the theme. Then we'll have maybe 1 or 2 follow-ups. And then we'll try to set some 15 minutes at the end of the session to take any questions from the audience and participants. Yes.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you for being here. And I was hoping I was going to get 55 minutes.
Sorry.
What is yoga and why is it important? I mean, what else is important, you know? One of the fundamental things of life is that we, as a species, that's our privilege and that's our curse. We are the only species which looks for meaning. We look for something greater than the mere instincts, the mere biology of our physical systems. And this pursuit of deeper meaning of what we should do with our life and why are we here and how to spend the most precious currency, that is time, while we are in this body, is what propels human search. Search for meaning, search for all structures of thought and all civilizations that we have given birth to is ultimately seeking of purpose and meaning, what we should do with ourselves. And what we have found, we observe, not just in these times, but in all times preceding these times, that even though our intentions are noble, our follow-through or our practices, our approach to realize that intention is always often subpar. And so even though we want to create beauty, we want to create unity, what we end up doing is create Frankenstein monsters. And some wise beings realized that was what was happening. And how to answer this, how to solve this fundamental instinct in human beings to look for growth, to look for meaning, and yet end up creating something which is directly negating it. So the solution for that is yoga. And this idea of yoga getting off the mat and yoga off the mat, the thing is yoga has existed for thousands of years where there was no yoga mats. My own life, I tell this, I got a first yoga mat about 7 years ago. I've been teaching for 20 without the yoga mat 7 years. So yoga got on the mat very recently. So the whole point of yoga is really to how we can live this life in the most elegant, aligned way possible, where the experience is of yoga, meaning the state of yoga, which can only happen now. This is a very crucial thing to understand, that the state of yoga is always now. That is why Patanjali's Yoga Sutra starts with Ataha Yoga Anusashanam. We can say yes, and now I teach about yoga, but the fundamental meaning, what I see is yoga is always now. For all time is now. We can point to time in the past and the future, but ultimately we are always just now. And so the state of yoga has to be now, and we have to explore, are we living from a deeper place of unity to the degree we are capable, or we are still bound by structures of thought? Then from that state of yoga arises the practice of yoga, where we get to practice yoga in every aspect of life. There has to be ultimately no aspect of our life which is not touched by yoga. If there is, our yoga is limited to a mat or a yoga cushion, it's not yoga. It's a nice thing we do. Yeah. It's like Pilates also, it's wonderful. If you're just coming to yoga for physical benefit, there are much better workouts out there. Just lift anything against gravity, it will work. So to limit yoga just to a physical exercise doesn't work. It has to penetrate every aspect of our life. The practice of yoga leads to the experience of yoga. The state, the practice, and the experience. The experience deepens the state of yoga. That state informs the action of yoga, that is the practice of yoga. The practice deepens the experience. So we are living in this cycle of yoga, from a state of disintegration to a state of integration. State of integration, practice of integration, experience of integration, from isolation to unity. And so yoga is the most powerful pathway for driving evolution in every aspect of our life, on a personal level and also on a social level, on a communal level. Yoga is ultimately answering all the fundamental questions that we as a species have. That's good, no? 5 minutes? Good, thanks.
I was like, oh, that was 5 minutes already. Puja Sadhviji.
Just also to mention before starting that given that you're all yogis, including those who do yoga on the mat, there's lots of space in the front, and I'm seeing lots of people come in and kind of hunt around for chairs. By all means, feel free to use a chair, but you should also know that all of this space in the front is open to anyone who wants to come and join our beautiful Rishikumars in sitting on the ground. To me, yoga is the solution to pretty much every problem that we're facing in the world today. Those of you who know my background know that I come originally from an academic background in psychology. Now, by God's grace and the grace of Mother Ganga, I've had the amazing blessing of spending the last almost 30 years living here, immersed in spirituality. But from both perspectives, the problems that we face, if you look from a societal level, a psychological level, a level of that which is ailing our planet today, we see depression, we see anxiety, we see loneliness rates that are skyrocketing. We obviously see a lot of physical illness and dis-ease. We've eradicated almost all of that, which was killing us 100 years ago, that came from rats or mosquitoes or bad water. And we're now getting sick and dying from diseases that are basically due to a system being out of balance, a system gone awry, from the way we think, to the way we live, to the way we eat, to the way we interact. So whether you're looking at physical dis-ease, or whether you're looking at depression and loneliness and addiction, and obviously, of course, they are not separate, but whatever way you are looking into this state of unbalance, lack of alignment that we are living with, climate change, environmental destruction, wars, it's systems that are out of balance, whether it's my physical body, my muscles, my bones, my blood, my organs, whether it's me and the seasons, me and the locality I live in, or whether it's me and Mother Earth. We are out of balance, my friends, and yoga is that brings us back into alignment. We know from an etymological standpoint that the word literally means union, to unite. And in that union, it is a reminder of the truth of who we are, which is not separate. So when I say that it's the solution to even that which seems psychological, depression, loneliness, anxiety, well, those arise because we live in the myth of separation. If I feel separate from myself, from the divine, from the universe, from each other, from the trees and the water, well, naturally I'm going to suffer. Naturally I'm going to feel depressed and anxious and lonely. And out of that, I'm going to become an instrument of bringing suffering to the planet. Because if I'm an object and everything else is an object and I'm living in a state of othering, well then sure, why not cut down the trees? Why not exploit people of a certain color or race or gender? Because hey, they are other. They're not me. And whether it's our indigenous sisters and brothers in the Amazon, whether it is all other species on this planet, whatever way of othering we are looking at, yoga is the solution to it, because yoga reminds us there is no other. So in our practice of the attainment of that realization, because it's important to remember the word yoga is a noun, not a verb. It's who we are. It's how we are. It's not what we do for 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes. It's that which, as Anandji was saying so beautifully, infuses every minute of who we are and every aspect of who we are. So how I think, how I live, how I eat, how I dress, how I shop, how I move through the world, how I see myself, how I see others. That's yoga. And lastly, so many of us, I would venture to say all of us, want on some very deep level to be instruments, channels of healing on this planet. We see the hatred, we see the division, we see the violence, we see the suffering, and we want in some way to be an instrument, a channel that brings light and healing. Yoga is the best way I know, because only when we are aligned within ourselves are we able to actually be efficient and effective instruments in the hands of the divine to bring real healing to the world. Otherwise, we just run around, holding pickup signs and yelling about this or yelling about that, or starting this organization or starting that organization, or raising money for this, and all of those are great things. But we need so much more in the world today. And the only way for us to really be instruments of that healing is to get in alignment. That body, mind, soul, that jivatma to paramatma, that re-remembrance that we never were separate to begin with, so it's actually a reunion rather than a union, or a re-remembrance of a union that never stopped being a union. And in that, our very being becomes a solution to the problems that our world is facing.
Namaste to all of you. I am privileged to be present here in this charged environment of yoga. The question, what is yoga and does it matter? I will first take in very brief the significance of the question itself, what is yoga? Why this question is important? Because today yoga has evolved, become popular, and spreading across in geometric progression, spanning all cultures, creeds, races, regions, religions, genders, age. In short, it is becoming more and more popular. Whenever anything becomes popular, it naturally becomes mediocre. Inevitably and invariably, its understanding gets diluted and its essence gets lost. This is natural for anything that becomes popular, because more and more people want to get into the bandwagon of yoga, and capitalize on it. When such thing happens, suddenly when we ask the question, what is yoga? It is like stepping back from hectic activity, introspecting, and actually trying to find a small needle in a growing hacksack. Very difficult to find the essence of yoga. Contemporary yoga, or yoga that is practiced in modern times, as distinguished from its classical roots, is totally different. And when we look at the various styles of yoga practiced, the purposes for which it is practiced, the question necessarily arises, is this yoga? What is yoga? This question and an answer to it may run into unending debate unless and until we have a way of conclusively establishing what is yoga. Unfortunately, that way of establishing what is yoga is to fall back upon the scriptures, upon the yogic texts. Only when the texts give the backing to the practices that we do, then we can say, yes, this is genuinely yoga, authentically yoga. If we have to restore yoga to its pristine purity, its authenticity of the practices has to be re-established, the purpose of yoga has to be reclaimed, and the methodology has to be re-ascertained. In all our Guru Shishya Parampara having textual backing, various traditions of yoga were done. Yes, we do understand that in modern times, modifications, refinements of what was being practiced in ancient times is necessary to suit our circumstances, our situations. But in the process of bringing about those modifications, if the essence itself is lost, then we feel happy that we are doing yoga without doing yoga. Because we have not yet answered the question, what we are doing, is it yoga or not? Falling back upon the scriptures, though it requires a little bit of deciphering, is necessary to establish the authenticity of the practices that we are doing. And only when we do that, then yes, it matters, yoga matters. The answer to the question, what is yoga, matters, because then I have a perspective of what I am doing. I have a standard to which I can measure my progress that is happening, whether I am reaching the goal or not. Having said that, if I come now to answer the question, what is yoga? Probably 5 minutes is very short a time. I can only say that with every piece of knowledge that you get, when you go deeper, your ignorance increases, not knowledge. Because with every piece of knowledge, you realize how much you don't know. It is not knowledge which is increasing, it's ignorance which is increasing, because this is an infinite field, absolutely infinite field. Where you learn something, you apply to yourself, you go deeper and deeper into it. If at all I have to make an attempt to answer what is yoga, then there are several approaches to understand what is yoga. Starting with, yes, yoga is one of the 6 orthodox Indian philosophies, Astika Darshanas. So from the Darshanic point of view, what is yoga? If you come to the etymological meanings of the word yoga, the whole vision starts opening out. Yoga is concentration, samadhi, it is a discipline, it is a union. If you come to the definitions of yoga, we have Patanjali's definition, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. We have Bhagavad Gita definition of yoga karmasu kaushalam samatvam yogochate dukkha samyoga viyoga yoga. We have Yoga Vasishtha definition. From there, when we come to the traditions of yoga, mind-boggling traditions, today they are living traditions, whether you take mantra yoga, nada yoga, lay yoga, so many traditions of yoga. Add to that our modern traditions. From there we come to the practices, starting with Shuddhi Kriyas, asanas, pranayam, bandhas, mudras, meditation, So many practices, you can latch onto any of the practice, specialize in those practices. Then comes the purpose for which you are doing yoga, whether it is empirical purpose for health, happiness, or for spiritual evolution, reaching the goal of kaivalya or self-realization. And then based upon those purposes, how do we implement that in our day-to-day lifestyle? Because high time we change our language and not talk about doing yoga, but talk about being yogic. Because as Sadhviji said, it is not a part-time activity that you spread your mat and do yoga. It is how you are being in the 23 hours that you're not on the mat, how you are. That is the yogic nature. So what is yoga is a whole, spectrum which you are fortunate to go little bit into it and enjoy the amrit or the nectar of yoga. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So it's such an honor to be here. And on behalf of all of the yatris who have been drinking from the source, which includes all our ancestors and wisdom keepers that are always invited here so that we have this global feeling of this flow of consciousness. And so I'm just so moved, and I really want to say I agree with and echo everything that you've offered. And it feels like maybe a moment where we could honor, particularly after yesterday being International Women's Day, the tradition from all the way in Srinagar of Laleshwari, the great yogini, who I think went to a great gathering that lasted like the Kumbh Mela for days and days, and then when it was the moment to speak, she just went into samadhi. And I don't know about you, but I think we're feeling that cracking of the coconut. And we've sincerely come here in that spirit of sevikas and as sadhakas. And so I'd like to just humbly offer a bow to the mystic heart. So as I was in meditation to come here, I think that just maha aham, that we are absolute reflections of this cosmic dance. And that simple bhakti practice, maybe we can just have some nourishment of looking to the left and the right. And in the great Anandamayi Ma, I think her silence too, being in Kashi and so close to you, I felt we were in a field. I touched the Kumbh, and then I went back to Kashi, where you just weep to be where these holy beings, such as Anandamayi Ma, who was in a Svadiksha path, meaning she was breath initiated, like in the South, Ramana Maharshi. Forgive my pronunciation. But I think that is the powerful seed. It's so easy on this path. We're going to be like Laleshwari, misunderstood. And I've noticed that the closer you get to the roots, you see that the source of such misunderstanding is in the bija. So my father gave me my name, Shiva, and so he would love Nataraja, and he was a surfer, and so it kind of gave me this freedom to follow that path, and it started very early, like as a child. And so I'd like for all of us to have that feeling of, in a way, that initiation of yoga that happens in these moments of being with the aham, our soul nature, or to answer what is yoga. For me, has just been emptying concepts and just getting to this field of love. I was in this morning thinking, what is yoga? It's Puja Swami's eyes. it's seeing Sadhvi's transformation in the devotion to yagna, and that we have this opportunity to go to the true, in a way, fire that we are. And so, from being a very early yoga student, and on the way to India to do seva work, but that was when Indira Gandhiji was shot. So I was in midair, headed to do seva as a 17-year-old, leaving college because this seed, fire, it grows, it guides us. And I'm so sorry for the misunderstandings. And so it takes me to places like Anandamayi Ma's ashram and her writings. What is yoga? It's the state of pranam. It's in our heart. We don't need any prerequisite. We can close our eyes. If no other part of our body, perhaps in hospices, when you're in Kashi, we see the guts, we see the last breaths. And we go to that beautiful, it doesn't matter our spiritual background, but the truth is we're given 26,000 cycles of breath every day. And this is the beautiful teaching in Ayurveda, that the first moment of our pranam is when we open our eyes, and to stay for that divine breath. And I think honestly it's been very difficult for me to be that sadhaka and see all of the changes in the world. And it kind of broke my heart when I came to Rishikesh, because I think Ambaji, we wanted to do a Ganga Namaskar. So we faced the Namaskar. And then to see that any of us can be misunderstood, it breaks our heart because we're sincere. So I really want you to know, everywhere I go, they're real sincere seekers of yoga. It's awakening from the breath inside us. This is our great teacher. So on behalf of these great yoginis who often had no other choice, because I've been on these pilgrimages to the yogini temples, and all of the images of Devi have been cut. But even in nothingness, that power of Gaia is inside us, informing us. And so perhaps, Sadhviji, we can just have a moment of meditation. And just lastly, I want to say that most of my research has taken me away, farther away. So it was a good lesson, I think, for all of us to say, how can we drink from the roots with all of this convincing that artificial intelligence is greater than we've ever known, but we've never even investigated, of the 26,000 breaths we have, how this can take us to the sap that is beyond. So my teachers are in Trivandrum, where that greatest wealth is in the Padmanabha Swami temple, this gold that is protected. This is what I think yoga gives us, as we feel this treasure that is beyond any material. And you reflect this, you give the teachings in Hindi. You're awakening my Hindi. So this sense that to honor the yoginis is to say, yes, we need no mat, we need no special clothing. We should be with this animal intelligence that is actually just meaning our buddhi, this natural intelligence that Ayurveda and Tantra and all of the great teachers here. So that was our intention, to bring the chenda. You said, come for international. We said, we're bringing 110 sticks. We want people to know an ancient temple tradition is alive, a bhakti tradition that is all over. We can feel this together. So shall we enjoy some moments, maybe breath, 3 moments together in silence? We could move together. For me, the dream is that there's no requirement. You can be in your throne in a wheelchair, you can be in a great elder, you can be a newborn, and yoga brings us to that great pranam.
Whenever you're ready, rub your palms and bring it to your eyes. I think we're going to take this opportunity to open out to any questions that you might have so that we can hear from you directly before we run out of time. And so Farina is going to be here at the front. And if you can just come up and ask your question, and I would just request, just keep it very short and ask the question, yes? So that we can get as many people in as we can. I don't think we'll have too much time, but we'll try.
Thank you so much for the divine words. My question is that I am associated to an organization since 17 years, and I've been practicing Siddha Yoga. As Sir said, that there are different traditions of yoga. So I've been associated to Siddha Yoga since 17 years. But as I heard all the great persons, all the great yogis listening, after listening to them, I was into tears. And I think that the union of the Shakti which is residing inside me, when it meets the Shiv which is residing in, who is residing in the Sahasrar, that upliftment happens when we sit with people who are already enlightened. Why does that not happen when we are in a worldly thing? I'm into an administrative services. My batchmate is right now collector in Pauri Gadpal. And I've seen all the faces of the world. But, you know, you feel that peace when you are sitting with the enlightened people, but not when you are there with the other world. Why so?
Very good question. We're actually going to take other questions, and we'll take the questions at one go, and then we'll give it to the panelists to answer those questions as Sadhviji suggested to save us some time. So any other questions, please raise your hand. Who else has a question? Anybody else?
Hi there. Thank you so much to all of you for speaking with us today. It's an honor to be here. My question is for all of you, but potentially maybe mostly directed to Sadhviji. I work with children to educate them about our rivers in the United States. And so I teach children about rivers and how to protect them. So I would love to hear about your work here and the work on the Ganga, protecting this beautiful river for future generations. And I would love to hear your perspective on the kindest, most optimistic way to teach our children about the protection of our beautiful rivers and streams. Thanks.
Lovely, thank you. Any other questions? Fanina is getting to you as quickly as she can.
Hi.
My question is for Anandji. When you say yoga is always now, it's so important, it's so beautiful. Do you have advice on how to tap back into the present moment when we're running into the future or the past?
Lovely. Last one. Anybody else? Great. We will take those three. Shall we start with the Ganga one first and then the administrator?
First of all, such beautiful and diverse and deep questions. What we'll do, I think, is just have each of us speak in whatever way flows through us to all or any of those questions that have just arisen, because in such a beautiful way, we all come from such diverse beginning points and yet converging in this sacred river of love and of yoga. Before coming to the Ganga, or the rivers in general one, I wanted to just speak to the first question for a moment, because this is something that arises, as you can imagine, on a very regular basis here in Rishikesh, because we have so many people who come from all over the world for a day, a week, a month, a yoga course, just a couple of days spiritual immersion, whatever it may be. And one of the questions that arises all the time is, why is it so easy to feel that truth, that peace, that bliss when I'm here, when I'm in this sacred place, when I'm around the holy people? And why is it so hard to tap into when I'm on the subway or in a board meeting or punching a time clock or shopping for groceries or whatever it may be? And it's a really deep and important question, because on the one hand, spiritually, God is everywhere. And we are everywhere. If we're talking about self-realization, God realization, samadhi, moksha, liberation, well, all of that which we need is with us everywhere. It is us. There's nothing that we're getting physically from somewhere else. The dilemma is that what we call Maya, or ignorance, illusion, I won't go into all of the details because we don't have that much time, but it wraps us up in its metaphoric veil, and we forget. We lose easy access, not access at all, but just easy, immediate access to the truth. There's a teaching in psychology called availability bias. And what it basically means is that which I see all of the time is what I think is true. So most people, for example, think that you're much more likely to die by being struck by lightning than you are in a car accident. Why? Because getting struck by lightning is in the news, a car accident is not. Or you're much more likely to die in a plane crash than a car crash. We see it in the news, we hear about it, it's breaking news, so everybody thinks it's much more true than that which actually is true but doesn't get the headlines. And the same thing is the case with who we are. We are moving through a world in which we are constantly receiving projections that say, you are your body, its size, its shape, its color, its weight, its popularity, its bank account. You are that. And we are energetically receiving those projections of ignorance. And we're energetic beings, whether you look at it on a spiritual level or you look at it on a level of quantum mechanics. Put any of us under an electron microscope, And you're not going to see bones and separation. You're going to see whirling, twirling energy. So we're picking up energy in the world around us of ignorance. You come into a holy place, you come into the presence of holy people. And what you're picking up is an energy of truth. Because you're not being seen as a body or a color or a bank account or a role. You're being seen as soul, as divinity. And so it is creating a space in which you, should you be so inclined, are able to drop into that truth of who you are. Which is why it's so beautiful to come. It's why it's so beautiful to be around masters. But it also reminds us that each of us can play that role for our communities. And the importance of Sangha, wherever we are, is to create communities in which we reflect to each other the very truth of who we are. In which we don't say things to each other like, God, did you lose weight? You look great. Not that you may not look great, but that we refrain from projecting stories about who we are and our value and our worth based on our physical bodies onto each other. And in this world today where we are meant to be in the world, we need to create those communities. So I wanted to make sure to speak to that because yes, you're always welcome here. We love having you. It is the role that spiritual beings and teachers and masters play. But at this point in time, every one of us is being called upon to channel that individually, to access that individually, and to reflect that for each other. With regard to the question of rivers, I'd be happy to talk to you in more detail about that separately. But the key point that I think is most important for everyone is that experience of connection. I am able to dump waste in a river. I am able to cut down a tree. I am able to eat an animal. I am able to enslave a Black person only as so far as I think they are separate from me, different from me, other. And whether we are looking at humans of different colors or genders or races or sexual orientation, whether we are looking at different species, whether we are looking at Mother Nature, the solution to all of that is to remember the connection. And with kids, it is so easy. Get them in the water, get them on the edge of the river, get them bare feet, get their hands in the dirt. Do not worry if they eat dirt. Kids have been eating dirt for as long as there has been dirt and kids. It is great for them, actually. We've got a lot of experts who have a lot more experience than I do in that field, but what I know in the little that I know about that field, the science of allergies and sensitivities and antibacterial this and that is we are creating these problems. Get your kids' hands in the dirt, get your kids in the dirt, get them in the water, get them hugging trees, get them playing with worms, get them knowing that we are one. Stop saying things to them like, oh, put that down, that's dirty. Stop teaching them that that which is in the earth somehow is going to contaminate them or harm them or is separate from them. Stop using words like natural resources. The earth is not a resource. It is sacred, it is holy, it is divine, and kids feel that so intuitively that if we can just stop pulling them in different directions, they teach us.
Hello? Yeah. In addition to what Sadhviji said, I'll provide one or two observations on the questions that were asked. One question which was asked specifically was, in front of enlightened people, why do you feel nice? Yeah. This is even scientifically verified now, that each of the living beings, every living being has an aura. An aura is an emanation of the energy body outside the physical body, and it is absolutely vibrations. Depending upon what emotion you entertain in your mind, the frequency of the auric vibrations changes, the color changes, the extension of the aura from the physical body changes. And if that energy body is made of vibrations, and if in your mind you entertain a particular emotion, then corresponding to that emotion, the vibrations around your body change. Those vibrations are in touch with the person sitting in front, his or her aura, through the atmosphere. So those vibrations start affecting the person there in front. Automatically, Patanjali gives a very beautiful sutra for this. He says, ahimsa pratishtayam tat sannido vairatyagaha. In front of a person who practices non-violence perfectly, when you go close to the person, all your enmity will disappear. All your aggression will disappear. Because the energy that is emanated from that person automatically influences you. Our human environment, natural environment, which is one of energy, is bound to have effect on us. That is why Patanjali also in the Chitta Prasadana technique says, given a choice, always have friendship with happy people. Because that happiness is bound to rub onto you. If you're in the midst of people who are critical, negative, pessimistic, automatically you'll become critical, negative, pessimistic. You will not know how you'll become. Because we are all nodes on a web of energy. And each one's energy is, affecting each other person. This is very natural. So, if you have just mentioned enlightened person, that person's energy is powerful. So whenever you go close to the person, that energy will change your mind definitely. Yeah. So this is a very obvious fact. Now the fact of aura is no longer fantasy or fiction. There are machines to measure the aura there. So it is coming under the scientific purview. Okay. I had that observation. To the observation on the question of now, one person asked here, just one or two observations I have to make, which are very beautiful observations. And that is, you may not have noticed, but our sense organs are always in the present. Sense organs are always in the present. Our mind has the blessing to be in the past and the future. It's a blessing. Because it is a blessing, as a race we have survived so far. Because from a past experience we become wiser, we prepare for our future because we are able to project into the future. So the capacity of the mind going to the past and the future is a blessing for human being. But unfortunately, this same blessing becomes the worst curse, because even when we don't want to go to the past or the future, the mind without helplessly goes to the past or the future. Now you see the conflict that is there. Sense organs are always in the present, mind is always in the past or the future. If I put two premises, what is over, what is past is gone, what is future has not yet come. Life is only in the present. Take this first premise, life is only in the present. Take the second premise, mind is always in the past or the future. The conclusion is very gloomy. The conclusion is we are not living at all. This is actually the fact. Because when we put the morsel of food on a breakfast inside, the mind immediately goes, what is there for lunch today? Now you're eating breakfast, the mind has run there. The whole discipline, what Mehrotra ji was saying, Atha Yoga Anushasana, now the discipline of yoga can be translated into the discipline of yoga is of the now. Can I bring the mind continuously to the present moment? Even now when you're listening to all of us, you may think you are with us now. I'm 100% sure you're not totally with me. Because even when I'm saying something, the mind is comparing notes. It's going here and there. The whole discipline is, can I bring it to the present? Yoga is fully of the now. All spiritualities are of the now. Whether you take Zen, Sufism, Christian mysticism, all of them have the capacity of bringing to the now. Life is only in the now. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Tommy, where are you going? I'm joking. The thing with time, is it's all we have is time, right? And that's the only thing we don't have. Also is time. It's a strange thing, isn't it, about time? And the mind makes it believe, because we have memory and we can remember yesterday and we don't remember tomorrow. So we feel that we are moving from past to the future. And now is just a formality. And yet when you pay attention, all you have been ever is just here. So even though it appears that we are moving from the past to the future through the now, what is actually happening, if you pay attention, is future is coming to you. You're just staying here. Like right now, you're just sitting. And we can keep sitting, and what we call tomorrow will be upon you. What you call 10 years from now will be upon you. You don't have to go to it. It comes to you. Yet on the level of our memory, it appears that we are going from yesterday to tomorrow through today. And the mind, which has not been trained, is fundamentally afraid. It is afraid of the future. So it's always trying to solve the future. The lower swings of the mind, craving and aversion, right? And so we can realize that, and we can see that the activity of the mind is mostly in an untrained environment, is loaded with anxiety. And so as far as when we can begin to recognize that, and of course our sadhana, our practice, gives us the capacity to even realize when the mind is swinging in anxiety to the future or the past. And so one of the tools that we can apply, as was shared just now, was about how our senses are in the present. And one of the most dynamic activity and the fundamental activity of our life is our breath. And our breath is the most dynamic expression of the system. It's always in the now. So we can always come back to breath. And we can train the mind. And one of the greatest tools which is used in our tradition is mantra, where we are consciously generating thought instead of the involuntary activity of the mind. We use the mantra as a tool, as a medicine, to anchor our attention, because it's not thought which is the issue. Involuntary thought is happening. What is the issue is our attention collapses on that thought and we find we are absent. So we train our attention through our meditation, our sit-down practice, but during the day when we find this swing is happening, japa is phenomenally helpful. So you come to your breath is helpful, breath dharana, and the use of japa as a mantra, as a tool to anchor our attention in the present moment. And we start to develop this wide spectrum of awareness where we are aware of that mantra, which is anchoring our inner attention while we are actively engaged in what is here and now. And when we consistently do that, where we can fulfill the need of the hour in the highest way possible in the here and now, which is one of the primary meanings of dharma, then we find the future that comes to us has to match how we are in the present. Because we can verify, we can observe that it is not that we go to the future, even though it appears because of our memory, it is that future comes to us. But what kind of future we will experience is ultimately hinged on our own state. What state we are most consistently maintaining, that's the kind of future we will discover. So much so the future is an act of creation where we feel we are creating a future, but it is also as much an act of discovery. You discover the future. And what kind of future you discover is ultimately hinged on what is your consistent consciousness state. When? Now. Because that's the only place you are ever. You can think about other divisions of time, but you can never get there. You can only be here no matter how hard you try. 10,000 years from now, if I ask you, where are you, you will still say, here. So we can only point to there, we can never get there, right? So the use of anchoring our attention in the breath in the moment and developing a japa practice is a phenomenal tool. And one of the things which, this question asked about how we feel in sacred spaces and with high vibrational people, we get into an elevated state. And which is a beautiful part of our tradition, what we call satsang, being in a community of like-minded people, being in a community of high vibrational people. But we cannot live our life limited by that. We have to go out in the world and be of service. And one of the things Maharaji always taught me was, ultimately, what is sacred? Sacred is whatever you give permission to. The temple did not construct itself and said, and the murti did not enter it and said, I am sacred, and what is outside of my temple is not. It is also, and ultimately the seer is the seen, the experiencer is the experience, the observer is the observed. So what if one of the healthy attitudes, we do our practice and we be in satsang as much as we can, but when we go out into the field, what if we start to bring this awareness that this is also holy? When you sit in the subway, and you sit in the train, you go in the trains in India. India has one of the biggest railway network in the world. And if you go with that, this is the banks of the Ganga also, this train. And these people are also enlightened somewhere. Because ultimately, soul is infinite. The nature of Atman is it's infinite, eternal. So destiny of every soul is total realization. So in some value of now, even the people you do not like are fully realized. So what if we start to bring that awareness, that even in the midst of the chaos, you can bring this at this is holy, this is the temple also. And ultimately all reports are the reports on the consciousness state of the reporter, first, and only secondly on the reported. So we use our communities, we build our communities, we dip into that, but then when you go out into the world, I recommend bringing this awareness that this is all holy, and all beings I'm encountering are somewhere enlightened. Are you with me or not? Somewhere. In some location of now, maybe not here. And what is limiting my experience of now is my nervous system. For ultimately, there is this eternal now, the eternal here and eternal now. So some value of now, every one of us is fully realized. Just like in the singularity, if you feel the theory of creation of Big Bang, we were all in it. The Yoga Ghat, all of us in it, were infinitely together in that singularity. And we are now together in this singularity, which just appears plural, but ultimately just singularity, Advait, indivisible. And so I recommend bringing this attitude, which really is helpful. And that's one of the gifts of India. That's where there is altars everywhere. Where can you build an altar in India? Anywhere you like. That's the beauty of India. You put a rock under a tree, and after a while, that becomes the altar. Somebody puts a flower, and then before you know it, everyone is putting a flower. You tie a string, and then people start doing parikrama around it, and it becomes a pilgrimage center. So you can have altars everywhere. Why? Because there is nothing not sacred. So you get to decide what is sacred. Sacred does not come, knock, knock, who's there? Hey, I am sacred. By the way, just wanted to let you know, that which is not me is not sacred. No. Either there is only sacred or there is no sacred at all. And yet the sacred can appear not fitting within our preferences. So my recommendation always, and that's the gift of India and the gift of yoga, is to generate this ability wherever we go, we realize that's also holy. And realizing that the experiencer is the experience. So we dip into this amrita, this nectar of this incredible community, and then we go out and practice yoga. A little bit harder, but worth it. Yes or no? Good, thank you.
Are we over time?
Almost.
Thank you so much. And I'd like for us to maybe go on a journey for a moment and think of how many times people have described yoga as being 5,000 years old. But maybe if we make that pilgrimage to the heart of India in Madhya Pradesh, where we can see the cave art that shows the mridangam, the drum and dance from 12,000 BC, and that these 700 caves are the collection of the greatest rock art in the world. How come the history of yoga doesn't include that? There was an unbroken stream of fire keeping. And when you go to the few caves that are there, you see the yagna, you see the havan, you see the homa. And then we know now in Mohenjo-daro, though, that there was such a great respect for the women, the matrikas, that it was such an incredible living legacy. And what if maybe from the archaeological record now, yoga is actually maybe 2 million years old? We can see everywhere there was a fire, we were in meditation, naturally. And this is that beautiful teaching in Ayurveda that we have to be the fire keepers of this gift of life inside us. And yet, we sit by the Ganga and nothing is needed. We start to feel our sama agni. When we start to feel that excessive aggravation of vata, which is now challenged 24/7, it is a real sacred activism that India and so many indigenous communities are holding to be the fire keeper of your awareness, to keep it close to this experience of embodying the sacred, as Anandji was saying in our Divya Deha. And all of these kavacha practices. Life will challenge us beyond our control. We'll feel something happens to our outer body. And then we feel all of these moments when we're charging each other just through our darshan. That to me is like all the practices, the mother just gives you that simple one. How that gaze of that, how we pass the spark. And then, I don't know about you, but that's my main practice. We go out in the world, and wherever we see the fire, that we see that fire keeping. And that is guiding us into wisdom and action. But also Ayurveda says we can't deplete ourselves. This is also a disrespect. In this incredible culture of being just at one, like when the Mahakumbh Mela, the Naga Babas and the Sadhvis that come down, or Dandapani, who met Alexander the Great, who was going to destroy everything. He just laid down in the forest and says, our very being can never be broken. This is the wholeness that can never be destroyed. And yet, all of us are being called from that meditation, from Gaia itself, and called to serve now. And it really is in every moment that we're moving with respect. And this is in the simplest way how Surya Namaskar, when it got translated as salutations, everyone, we started doing Chaturanga Dandasana. But unless we come to India, we don't see that that strengthening form is to give our strength to the earth. It's a strength that is giving our pranam. It's making us cool and humble. And think of translating that as a posture, and that the pranam is left out. And maybe we went on a huge ego journey and we just have to come back. And so that's all I know, Mata, is to come and get close, put our head on the earth, hug each other, put our heart fire. We are the fire keepers. If it gets dim, more mantra, more the science of our field, more seva and being in action. And it's true. There's a big ripple effect. So thank you for being the fire keeper of this gift of yoga that is naturally always that inextinguishable light. So, Tattvam Asi, Jai Gange, Jai Gurudev, Bhavani Tvam.
I just wanted to add that the plenary sessions are live streamed on our YouTube channel, Parmarth Niketan. There are QR codes on these signs also. go to them, watch the sessions again, listen to the wisdom again, and what you've captured from here, keep, like you have those, here in India we have like those hajmolas, and you put it in your mouth and you just keep it, let it dissolve. Like let those little nuggets of wisdom that you've captured, there's been a lot, but there's certain wisdom that you might have captured and you're like, that stuck out to me. Just let it stay with you and let it kind of percolate and, you know, settle in more and more, more and more, more and more. And it's been an absolute divine privilege to be moderating this panel. Thank you for this opportunity. And welcome again, all of you, to the International Yoga Festival. I hope you have an incredible week ahead of you. I know that for many of you, this is very new space. A lot of you have come to the first time and you're still discovering things like where's the yoga cot and where's the tent. And well, we hope that you will have a wonderful time discovering the space and then feel at home. Because as Pujya Swamiji says so beautifully, when we come here, he says, welcome home. And so really, we hope that this becomes a home for you, a place where you are not seeking to go to the past or to the future and just feel so comfortable and so open and so safe and so loved to be here in the now and to be here in yoga. And I hope that you take this invitation to not just do yoga, as was said here, but to be yoga, which means that every moment that you are here and every moment that you are back, wherever back is for you, that you take that yoga with you. Jai Gange.
And a very big round of applause also for our beautiful moderator, Ganga Nandani ji. She's the deputy director of this beautiful festival, an amazing yogini in her own right, and an amazing sevika here at Parmarth Niketan, who's been here now 15 glorious years in beautiful, beautiful seva and sadhana. And thank you so much for bringing your beauty and your wisdom and your presence to the panel and the moderation and to the festival. And so much love to all of you.